Recently, I made a video on the new FNaF Ultimate Guide, talking about all the lore implications the book has. But throughout the book, while there are a lot of lore implications, there's also a lot of mistakes that the book makes. Some are small gameplay things, some are huge lore facts, and in this video I'll be going over all the ones that I noticed so we can decide whether this book is actually reliable to use for lore, or if it should be completely disregarded or maybe somewhere in between. So I hope you all enjoy, and let's get started. Number 1. On page 7, we get a very updated version of the animatronic movement map for FNaF 1, and you can tell this is one of the things that DJ Starf helped with considering he's popular for his understanding of gameplay mechanics. This page actually has a lot of corrections to common misconceptions about the first game, like how you actually don't have to check Pirate Cove to stop Foxy, you just need to open the cameras in general, and there's just general corrections on how the animatronics move around. For the first book, I also criticized the fact that Freddy is supposed to be in the middle of the stage, and the book swapped the positions of him and Chica, but this book fixes that problem. However, there's some issues here too. First, the map literally shows an image of withered Foxy rather than classic Foxy, and second, there is literally an incomplete thought on one of these notes. Number 2. On page 15, we can find a correction to something from the first Ultimate Guide. In the original version of this page, it is said that the It's Me banner from Curse of Dreadbear was alluding to William Afton. However, there was never any confirmation that that was about Afton at all, nor is it confirmed that Afton is glitch-trap at all now with the Mimic. But this book removes the line referencing Afton entirely. Unfortunately though, this book still has the mistake of referencing a Mike from FNaF 4 who seems to be Michael Afton. While we know nowadays that the Foxy Bro is Michael Afton, the name Mike is nowhere to be found in FNaF 4 at all, so this is technically inaccurate. Number 3. Page 28 and 29 of the book are the FNaF 2 animatronic movement maps for the Wizards and the toys. In the first Ultimate Guide, the characters were represented by the classic versions of the characters rather than the actual toys and Wizards. This book fixes that. Mostly. The versions of the Wizards on the maps are very low quality images, and the versions of the toys are renders of their FNaF AR variants, but that's not a big deal. The problem is that they fixed the main 3 toys, but Mangle is still represented by classic Foxy, which is pretty stupid. Also, the messed up positions of the characters on the stage, while fixed for the FNaF 1 characters, are not fixed for the toys. Number 4. What's weird about this book is that it updates earlier parts of the book with knowledge we have nowadays, like how it now mentions the week before when talking about the It's Me flashes. However, it still doesn't remove completely outdated information. Page 37 still talks about how many people believe Phone Guy is Purple Guy, even though that's completely debunked nowadays. Sure, this is the FNaF 2 theory section, so I'm fine with mentioning it, but it says Phone Guy is a suspect for many, even though it's now debunked by both Scott's Ultimate Custom Night troll mechanics and the week before. Number 5. In all the first 3 Freddy Files books, including the Ultimate Guide, the lore and theories page of FNaF 3 claims the Shadow animatronics both help the children under what we know for sure. This is irrefutably wrong, at least for Shadow Freddy, as we know from Ultimate Custom Night and FNaF 6 that Shadow Freddy is William Afton's wickedness and that he actively works with him. He is clearly an evil entity, not a benevolent one, and even if that wasn't the case, saying we know he helps the kids for sure is simply not true. Shadow Bonnie may be a benevolent entity, but it's not certain. However, in this book on page 54, they actually separated the helping the kids part into its own subtitle that says, What We Wonder About, where it asks the question, do they help the children as it seems? I actually really like that they fixed this, because this is one of those things that I had a big issue with in the original Ultimate Guide, so it's good that they made it a question rather than treating it like a confirmed statement. Number 6. Page 55 discusses the fan theory of Golden Freddy being a springlock suit, and how one piece of evidence is Golden Freddy being crumpled on the ground similar to Afton when he gets springlocked. However, the end of the page adds on an extra string of text that was not in the previous iterations of the book, and also has absolutely nothing to do with the topic. This string of text discusses the FNaF 3 Easter egg of Shadow Freddy on the left side of the office, saying that the coloring indicates that it is Shadow Freddy rather than Golden Freddy. This isn't relevant though, because Golden Freddy overall is a crumpled suit, so the fact that this specific crumpled suit isn't Golden Freddy doesn't affect the theory being presented here. Not to mention, that Shadow Freddy Easter egg literally isn't mentioned on the rest of the page at all, so I just find it super weird that this is brought up here. Number 7. What I'm realizing in this book is that there's a few things that the Ultimate Guide got right, but then this book adds on extra incorrect information, sometimes even replacing the correct stuff. It's really weird. The Shadow Freddy Easter egg thing is only one example. The same thing happens on page 72, which discusses Night 2 of Sister Location. At the end of the page, it talks about instructions for the breaker room, and then says, quote, "If you can avoid Ballora as you go through Ballora Gallery, you'll reach the breaker room." This makes no sense, because this is what happens before the breaker room. Ballora is also inactive when you go back through Ballora Gallery after the breaker room, and you obviously don't need to reach the breaker room because you are leaving the breaker room. This line should have been at the end of the previous paragraph, but for some reason it's here. I don't know why. It also replaces a line from the first Ultimate Guide, which simply says, "Exit through Ballora Gallery," which is, correct, so I don't know why they changed it. Number 8. Page 140 talks about the Mangle vent repair minigame from FNaF VR, but it actually gets a detail wrong. It mentions you descending the elevator and then the elevator stopping, but in Mangle's vent repair, you don't move at all. Mangle's minigame just has you be completely frozen and the doors open around you. You don't move around in an elevator at all until entered vent repair, so this is a bit of an error. This actually isn't the only vent repair related error though. On page 151, a page discussing all the locations of the Faz coins, it is said that the coin in hard mode entered vent repair is in Bonnet's Eye as you travel between the intro and the first set of puzzles. However, it's actually between the first and second set of puzzles, while the tape is the thing that's between the intro and the first set. Number 9. There's actually a couple more vent repair mistakes, but these ones are on page 153, the Easter eggs page. It is said that an Endo 02 can rarely be seen peering up at you from the grate below you in entered vent repair. However, this is actually in Mangle's vent repair, not Ennard's. Similarly, the book claims Nightmare Endo can be found in the Mangle vent repair when he is actually in Ennard's hard mode. They kinda just flip-flopped. This page also makes another small error, claiming that a mini arena can sometimes appear peeking out of the far left room in the plush trap level, which is true, but it missed the fact that it can also appear in Nightmare BB's level, and that it can appear in the right doorway too. Number 10. Page 190 seems very pro Tape Girl equals Vanny. This is a theory that has always kind of existed, but no one talks about it anymore because it's, not true. Obviously, this is the lore and theory section, so it's not confirmation, but it says it's possible and that a lot lines up if it's true. Unfortunately, the book misses a crucial detail. We literally play as Vanessa in FNaF VR. This is evident by the fact that when we put on the mask in Corn Maze, our breathing slows as if we are calming down, meaning the mask is ours. And the fact that we hear the dialogue between Vanny and Glitchtrap, or at least Vanny's side, when we pick up the Glitchtrap plushie, makes it clear that we are actively talking to him. Page 156 also cites the Halloween mask Tape Girl mentions in the tapes, but considering that was Jeremy's, and it's mentioned that Tape Girl can't see his face when he's in the VR, and she mentions how Jeremy used the paper slicer, and the prankster story, which is based on FNaF VR's plot, has a guy get possessed by Glitchtrap and then cut off his face, makes it evident that that's not the Vanny mask, it's just Jeremy's sliced off face. Number 11. The Security Breach chapter of this book actually takes a lot of information from the Security Breach Files book, basically further denouncing the fact that that book exists at all. While yes, each Freddy Files book does mostly make the previous ones obsolete, the fact that the Security Breach Files, both versions, exist at all, especially when another Ultimate Guide was inevitable in the first place, just makes me wonder why they chose to do it, considering the Files book literally just recounts what happens, gets a bunch of stuff wrong, and completely forgets a few things. What's the point in getting a guidebook for the game when you can just play the game or watch someone play the game and get an infinitely better and more accurate experience? I don't know, I just wanted to bring that up because both Security Breach Files books are probably my least favorite FNaF books to date. Sadly, there is an error from that book that did slip into this book too. Page 203 claims that at the end of 2 AM of Security Breach, Gregory remembers Moon, and then Moon appears right on cue, when he actually just sees Moon appear and is reacting to that. Number 12. On page 211, we learn about the Vanny ending, but this ending is not explained well at all. The end of the description says, "This leads to a hair-raising chase to Vanny's hideout before Vanny and Roxy catch you." This is a weird thing to say, because whether intended or not, it implies that the game ends here with Vanny and Roxy actually catching you, which isn't the case. Again, I don't think that's what it's meant to say, I think it just means you have to get there before they do catch you. But it's just worded really weirdly, and because it doesn't describe what actually happens with you disassembling Vanny, it acts like that's just the ending. One point towards the book though, is the fact that this section is based around the Security Breach Files book, which claims that Burntrap has the corpse of William Afton, and even refers to Burntrap as William Afton himself. While some theories suggest that still to be the case, it isn't confirmed, and this book fixes it by simply referring to him as Burntrap, not expanding on his Afton-related origins. Number 13. The security breach chapter of this book is kind of weird in general. The animatronics page, number 216, refers to Monty and Roxy as Glamrock Monty and Glamrock Roxy. While yes, they are a part of the Glamrock gang, the word Glamrock isn't actually a part of their names. What's also weird is that Ruin does not have its own chapter, despite Curse of Dreadbear having its own, and some of the Ruin characters like the Mimic are mentioned before the point where the chapter transitions into talking about Ruin, which for the record happens in the middle of a page. It also claims that the Mimic isn't an endo, and that instead it's an experimental AI creation, which, I mean, yeah, it's an AI, but what do you mean it's not an endo? It literally is. Number 14. One thing that I really don't like about this book is the Help Wanted 2 chapter. On page 228, we get the gameplay and strategy for Help Wanted 2, but we literally don't get the gameplay and strategy. We are told of minigames that exist in the game, but we are not told what each specific one is or how to beat them, despite the fact that the book does that for Help Wanted 1. It's not much of an ultimate guide if it skips over crucial details. Page 229 also makes a bit of a blunder. It claims that the Secret of the Mimic teaser update to Help Wanted 2 released in March of 2025, but that is simply not the case. It actually released in December of 2024. The descriptions for the endings on this page are also not detailed at all. When it comes to the Fast Force ending specifically, it says that we have to take off a mask to see that we are MaskBot, which literally just isn't true. We don't take off a mask at all. It also points out the charging station, asking if it's a human hand coming out of it, when it's actually just glitch traps. It also doesn't mention the fact that Vanny destroys glitch trap for some reason. It honestly just feels kind of lazy, because it's not in detail at all, and it doesn't get the same treatment that the Help Wanted 1 part does. Number 15. On page 230 and 231, we see which animatronics appear in Help Wanted 2 and which games they originate from. However, it gets a few things wrong. First and most egregiously, it claims that Ennard is from Security Breach rather than Sister Location. Jacko Moon is also under the new category, yet also appears under Security Breach, so not only does he appear twice, but he's not even in Security Breach. The same goes for the Head Chef Bot, which is a new character and for some reason is claimed to be from Security Breach. By that logic, Carney is from Pizzeria Simulator, but he's not. The page also has a bit about useful items at the bottom, and it claims that fast coins are for playing games, which is irrefutably untrue. They're for listening to Candy Cadet stories, and only the glitched purple coin is for Princess Quest 4. It then says that the Faz Wrench is used for unlocking games, doors, and who knows what else, but in the context of Help Wanted 2, it unlocks a single door and nothing else. Number 16. Allow me to take an entire page of the script to rant about the Secret of the Mimic chapter. Something that is extremely weird about this book is the fact that this chapter exists at all, but the book acts like Secret of the Mimic isn't out yet. Like, on page 232, it says that some fans think that the gift shop and factory behind it from Help Wanted 2 are Edwin's factory from the books, despite the fact that we know, thanks to Secret of the Mimic, that the gift shop was a model of Murray's costume manor, but specifically the version of it that Edwin wanted to make but was unable to. It's not even like you can say that this carries over from a previous book, because Help Wanted 2 wasn't out yet when the previous book came out, so they literally just wrote this part before Secret of the Mimic came out, and then didn't care to fix it despite this book releasing after that game. It also does the same thing later in the book. You might think I'm gonna say in the Tales from the Pizzaplex chapter, but nope, the Secret of the Mimic chapter acts as if Secret of the Mimic isn't out yet. It literally doesn't make any sense. On page 243, it said that fans think Secret of the Mimic will show where Edwin disappears to after the Mimic story, the Murray's living quarters in the warehouse, and that the factory in the picture from Help Wanted 2 is the warehouse from Secret of the Mimic. But we know from Secret of the Mimic that the Tales stories aren't in the games, that the Murrays don't live in the warehouse, and that the factory in the picture isn't MCM, but rather the gift shop is a representation of it. It also goes back and forth, saying we might see something in Secret of the Mimic, then talking about stuff that is in the game. Then it once again says fans think we'll see Fall Fest characters in the warehouse, as if the game isn't out. And let me just remind you, this is the Secret of the Mimic chapter. This is what's meant to tell you what happens in the game, and theories people have about the game. It is not supposed to be giving us outdated information about Tales being in the games, and theories people had about where the game might go, and pretending it's not out. It literally makes no sense. Page 244 is even worse though somehow. It talks about the Jester Springlock suit from the epilogues and how we might see that in Secret of the Mimic. But the game is already out, and we know that we see Springlock suits, and we also don't see Jester Springlock suits. And then it continues to pretend that Tails is in the games, talking about how the arm we see in the elephant costume could be one of the people sent into Edwin's warehouse in the story, placing the game after the events of the Mimic story. And page 344, which is about the Mimic story itself, claims that it leads up to Secret of the Mimic, which is obviously not true. I really don't know how they messed all this up. The only thing I can think is that a lot of this was planned for the Tales from the Pizzaplex section to act as the book talking about what people think might happen, but then the book was coming out after Secret of the Mimic, so they moved that stuff to the Secret of the Mimic chapter without revising it at all. But that still doesn't fix the issue of embracing Tales being in the games. I also don't know why though, because even if this was supposed to come out before Secret of the Mimic, I don't know why they would have predictions for it in the first place, considering the first Ultimate Guide came out like a week or two before Security Breach and literally didn't bring it up once. I just don't get it at all. It's so weird. Number 17. The Secret of the Mimic chapter is bad in more ways than just that somehow. Page 241 and 242 are mostly about the characters. However, under the animatronic section, Dolly is claimed to be an animatronic rather than a suit, which is weird because, well, this is the animatronic section, so all of them are animatronics. It also doesn't even show everyone. I can forgive not showing all the animatronics the Mimic wears, but the fact that it shows the elephant, pointing out how it was in ruin, and then doesn't show the bird or the lion that are also from ruin is really weird. And there's a bunch more it doesn't show. It also refers to the Welcome Show characters as the mediocre melodies, including Mr. Alligator, which we know is really just Monty, so I don't know why they call him that. But this group isn't the mediocre melodies. Some of the characters do get used for the mediocre melodies later, but this group is just called the Jug Band, which we know from the blueprints of some of the characters. It also disregards Happy Frog's appearance in FNaF 6, and claims she does appear in Security Breach and Help Wanted 2. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't think she's in either of those. Number 18. Page 270 talks about the ending of Return to the Pit, where you find a plushie of a girl with red pigtails, a white face, and a red dress. The book claims that this is Eleanor, but that's not the case. The book completely omits one detail that prevents this from being true. The doll has a red nose, which Eleanor simply does not have, meaning this doll is actually just Circus Baby instead, whose plushies have been popping up everywhere for some reason, so it kinda makes sense. Number 19. There's another example I noticed of the book being just a bit lazy in the Tales from the Pizzaplex chapter. The chapter uses art from the graphic novel version of Under Construction for almost the entire thing. Like, using it for Under Construction makes sense, but it's scattered throughout the entire chapter despite 22 of the 24 Tales stories having literally nothing to do with it. Only Claustrophobia is somewhat related, and its page has its own graphic novel art on it, so yeah, it doesn't really make much sense. The first Ultimate Guide has some exclusive new art for some of the stories, though unfortunately not all of them. That remains the same in this book, but there's absolutely no new art for any of the other stories. It just uses art that already exists for them or for the characters present in the story. It's just a little lame. Number 20. Page 322 confuses me just a little bit. It talks about Happs, but at the end of the page it says that the Fast Freddy attraction exists in other stories, but that Aiden and Jace seem like the only characters to have gone in. But the attraction in this story is Freddy's Fortress, not Fast Freddy. Fast Freddy is the roller coaster. Also, I can't tell if it's saying that Aiden and Jace are the only people to ever go in, or if it means the only characters from the stories to have gone in. I assume the latter, but it's worded just a bit weirdly. Number 21. Page 329 actually talks about the Bobby Dots Part 1 story, and how it sheds light on Moon's backstory, but it actually gets it wrong. According to this book, the Moon persona exists because of the numerous blackouts in the theater, so they decided to just keep the lights on. However, that's not true. The actual story says that the daycare attendant was a performer in a stage show that had a split personality, and when it was altered for the daycare attendant, it kept switching personalities because of the lights, so they decided to keep the lights on. The book was partially right, but it completely missed the stage show part, and it claims that the personality was created because of the blackouts, which is simply not true. Number 22. Lucky Boy's sign in Sergio's Lucky Day says, "I'm a lucky boy," but the art of him in the book has it say, "It's your lucky day." The description in the book claims that it does say "I'm a lucky boy," despite the image right next to it contradicting that. But this book updates the description to say that it does say "It's your lucky day" in some images. But just because you note that it says something different in some images, doesn't make that any more accurate, because those images were made for this book, and those images are still completely wrong. So those were all the major issues I noticed in the book, so now let's do a lightning round of a bunch of small stuff, besides the animatronic inventory, because that's just a shit show and we'd be here all day if I talked about everything it got wrong. So let's continue through the numbers with a lightning round of quick and minor issues. Number 23. Page 64 claims that with faster nights on in FNaF 4, nights are 30 seconds each, but it really means hours. Number 24. Page 89 talks about the FNaF 6 intro with Scrap Baby and ignores the fact that the tape cuts off and she talks before the training video starts. Number 25. Page 92 claims tutorial unit says, "Don't forget Saturday. You want them to all be in one place." But the line is actually, "Don't forget Saturday. You want them all to be in one place." Number 26. Page 183 claims that the static that appears to indicate where the animatronics are in FNaF AR appears as frost for Freddy Frostbear, but that's actually only for the static that covers the screen, which you have to shake away. Number 27. Page 213 refers to FNaF 6 as Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, but the game is actually called Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. Number 29. Page 220 says that in Ruin, Mapbot gives us the mask, but this is Maskbot, not Mapbot. Number 29. Page 233 references the theory that Monty killed Glamrock Bonnie, despite the book never mentioning that theory at all up to this point, because the Security Breach chapter literally just doesn't have a lore and theory section, which is just so stupid, especially considering it's probably the most theorized game in the entire series. Number 30. Page 266 says that in the week before, Ralph says the line of, as far as you know, he's never bitten any kids, but that's not true because this is a second-person book, meaning you are Ralph and the book is saying that about Ralph's thoughts. Number 31. The Coming Home page, number 290, has a piece of artwork that shows Susie with blonde hair and blue eyes. While this is her design in the games in the fourth closet, the story sees her with brown hair and brown eyes instead, so this isn't accurate to the story. Number 32. Page 296 says that no one can see Toby's shadow, but there is a guy named Reggie who can. Number 33. Page 314 says the real Jake is 3 years before the Stingers, but that's not true. Margie's asked in Epilogue 2 how long she's lived in Evan's house, to which she says 3 years, and by the time of the real Jake, she has also lived there for 3 years, meaning this is likely only a few months later. Number 34. On page 342, it is mentioned that some people believe the Mimic, Burntrap, and Glitchtrap are the same, which is accurate, but it says Burntrap's purple eyes match the Mimic's. It's hard to tell what it means though. Does it mean that they have the same color eyes, or that the design of their eyes is similar? If it's the latter, that's accurate. If it's the former, it's not. So it's unclear. But that's every mistake and fix that I noticed in this book. I think the biggest problem with it is the fact that it was not made with care. The Security Breach and Help 1 and 2 chapters are extremely sloppily made, with Security Breach's chapter mostly just taking stuff from the Security Breach Files book, which was already sloppily made, and not adding a lore and theories part doesn't make any sense considering the rest of the chapters had one. The Help 1 and 2 section just refuses to go into detail about literally anything despite the treatment of Help 1 and 1 earlier in the book. They didn't care to fix the errors that came along with the Secret of the Mimic release, and they still don't remove or alter sections discussing completely outdated theories. Honestly, it feels like we're never going to get an actual really good FNaF guidebook. Not just when it comes to getting lore details right, but even when it comes to getting objective facts right and remaining consistent with itself. But hey, check back in a few years when the Ultimate Guide 3 inevitably comes out, and we'll see if that one is any better. As of now, I'm of the opinion that this book can be used for additional evidence if a theory already has some, but it should never be relied upon for information about the lore. Chica's Secret Party is probably a different story, and we'll probably see in the future if it is, but other than that, I would avoid using this book to craft new theories rather than just supporting existing ones. And honestly, if you want to completely disregard it, I wouldn't blame you. But that's everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe if you want to, and stay tuned if you want to be updated if more information about Chica's Secret Party comes out. If it does, I'll most likely do a FNaF theory discussion with my friends talking about everything that's happening, like I did with Abyss. So if that sounds interesting, stay tuned and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye guys!